Hi, I'm Heidi. I work in the marketing team at 15below. Today I'm here talking with Al Tredinnick, our head of commercial. Al, you recently spoke at the Amadeus Altitude festival about the use of technology in disruption. So we wanted to get a few more insights from you and share them with our community. So the first thing that we want to talk about is, what strategies have you seen around disruption management?
Yeah, we've seen some great strategies recently, actually. Some of our airlines, particularly in the US, have been being very proactive about it and trying to sort of solve problems before they get there. So one of the great tactics we've seen is when an airline can see a big disruption on the horizon, maybe there's some big weather coming in at the weekend or there's a strike or something like that, they are going out to their passengers and warning them about it, so they don't have to come to them and ask them how they're going to deal with it, but then doing some proactive things to handle it, like offering people the ability to change their booking for free. And that just means that people who don't necessarily need to travel that weekend, say you're going back to see your family or something, it's not for a specific reason, but you just need to do it. You're thinking, well, actually, I'd rather not fly that weekend. If there's going to be a big snowstorm, I could just fly the following weekend instead. And that just means when that disruption actually happens, the airline's just got less people to deal with, basically. So sort of waivers been issued on business and corporate accounts for a long time, but doing that on on sort of B2C customers is a really good idea. Just another tactic that helps, basically.
Brilliant. And have you seen similar sorts of tools being used to manage disruption, or kind of similar strategies put in place?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we've seen some of the best airlines we've seen have been doing sort of nice collaborative sort of cross-silo approaches to these things. We always say it's all about proactivity and that kind of thing with the messaging and just getting out to people and telling them how much information is really important as well. If there is no information yet, tell people that so they don't have to try and do their own research and like hunting about and panicking. If there's not going to be any further updates until 12 tomorrow, tell everyone that and they can relax and communicate again at 12. And I think just trying to have that, like I said, that cross-silo approach. So our best airlines will have somebody from social media in the room, somebody from operations, somebody from customer service. So they're making those decisions holistically. If they can see something's going wrong, they're instantly, right, okay, first of all, let's tell everyone what we're doing, get a message out to the passengers, then start looking at the rebooking and that kind of thing. Constantly monitoring the effect that's happening on social media and that kind of thing to get feedback. We had an airline that took the decision to never reinstate a cancelled flight because passengers were angrier about it than they were if they got reaccommodated. So if they cancel the flight, what people tend to do is they tend to sort of wander off. They're thinking, okay, I'm not flying for a while. I'm going to go and get a dinner with my family, or I'll go home if they live close to the airport. Yeah. And the flight gets reinstated and everyone's furious because they've lost loads of money and time. So the only way you'll find that out is if you've got close connections there between all those departments and that kind of thing. Yeah.
Okay. And do you see any benefits in breaking those silos?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. At the moment, the industry seems to be very focused on, quite rightly, on things like one order and NDC and all these great sort of strategies. But I think we need to realise that isn't a linear flow. It should be a feedback loop. So, people talk about offer and order, and then you've got accounting and that kind of thing. But what we should really be looking at is when we're optimising how much to charge for flights, dynamic pricing, all of that kind of offer side of things. When they get through to the order, we have to accept that sometimes those need to be changed. They need to be optimised. There's going to be disruption events, all of that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And if we don't track the impact that has on operations, on customer service, and especially on the passengers, you won't really know whether you realised any of that profit. So there's a lot of algorithms and clever thinking that goes in on how to price things, how many routes to run, that kind of thing. But if you can't service that at the other end, because it's complicated. If you have to move, hundreds of thousands of your passengers around onto new flights for various reasons, if you can't communicate out to that effectively, if you can't retain that customer service whilst you're doing it, then you're going to end up rebooking them at a massive cost, or losing face, or having that customer tell all their friends never to book with you, worst case scenario. So, it's important to use that as a feedback loop. So we're working with a few airlines now to create like disruption scoring and reporting that feeds back into the beginning of the process. So they know if they want to optimize what the fallout of that will be.
Yeah.
And as a result, whether how to do that optimization in a kind of intelligent way. Because it isn't just about what you've got to sell, you've got to service as well.
Yeah. And so you sort of mentioned about the social media monitoring and that side of things. So what would be the main challenges to removing those silos?
I think the problem with the different silos is really it's almost a language thing. Each silo has they're all almost parts of different industries. E-commerce and marketing, very different to operations and customer service and that kind of thing. But I think the one thing that everyone does have in common is ROI. So I think getting down to the money and understanding the cost and the benefit is that common language amongst those different departments. So it's always really something we do with our customers is try and work out why they want it, what's the return on investment. Are you trying to save headcount at the call centre? Are you trying to reduce queuing times? Is it NPS scores? We often, with airlines, we work on reducing their call volumes at the call centre incoming, with operational reasons. So they've got more time to answer calls that might result in an upsell and a cross-sell. So that kind of thing everyone understands. E-commerce will get that as well, right? Because that's the same sort of language they speak about. What's the value add and the benefit and the upsell. So I think that is the trick that we see where you see silos begin to understand each other is when you get down to the what does it make us, what does it save us, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that's the same, that can be the same with customer loyalty and that kind of thing as well.
Cool, that's really good. And then in terms of best practice for airlines, so what would be the best practice for airlines in using tech to manage disruption? Okay,
so if we look at it as a sort of timeline, so first of all, you've got it at the point of booking or sometime after the booking as you're running up to that trip. First things to do these days is to make sure that passengers are ready to go, they're ready to fly, they've got the right e-visa, they know if there's any COVID restrictions, they've filled in all their CDC or attestation forms for the US, whatever that is, because that will cause disruption in itself. If you've got loads of people queuing up, paper forms, all that kind of nonsense, it's going to cause problems, right? Plus queries and calls to the call centre. If before you even get into a disruption event, if you can see that there might be some sort of disruption on the horizon, first thing to do, always go out to your customers and tell them what's happening. Always say to them, look, you might be aware that there is a storm planned or a strike is potential. This is what we're doing about it. This is what you need to do. Make sure that's all personalised as well. It's not a dear customer, something may happen at the weekend. It's a hi Heidi, we know you're flying at 15 minutes past 1 on Saturday with 2 children, blah, 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 And then tell them when the next information is going to be, maybe offer them the ability to choose another flight to get out of the way of it. And then when those disruptions hit, keep giving people updates. When those disruptions hit, have a really solid, robust, nearly entirely automated process, because it has to be if you want it to work effectively at those volumes. Where you're going out to customers, once the problem hits, our best practice always says, solve the problem first.
Yeah.
Tell the customer the solution you gave for them, because they don't know what the right solution is, and you don't want it to be first come, first served. So as an airline, the responsibility is always to fix the problem, find the best solution for that customer. Then we tell the customer, but then give them the option, if you want to give them the option, to decline that, to accept it, to change the flight. That way you know who's been dealt with, who hasn't, and if needs be they can go through to something like self-react from Amadeus or Management Booking, change the flight, and then keep giving them updates. Then when they get to the airport, make sure that they're getting flight announcements, gate changes, that kind of thing. Just been working recently with Amadeus to get proper gate announcements, so you don't need to go and stand and look at the board and that kind of thing. I mean, that's annoying anyway, but especially in a disruption scenario, if you're in a very disrupted airport, loads of people crowding around vid screens and trying to find, it's just an extra level of stress and nonsense. You want to be able to go off, have a drink, play with the kids, do a bit of shopping, whatever it is, and just get a notification saying, right now, go to this gate. It's that kind of thing that it just lowers people's heart rate. But then also, once you've packed them onto their flight, just be conscious of the fact that they've been disrupted. Make sure that's getting fed back into your marketing department so they don't, act like everything's fine and try and sell them a product and they just had a terrible time actually consuming, you know what I mean? And just try and make that feedback loop. We believe that if you get that right, if you're conscious of that, then passengers should still be up for flying with you next time, even though they didn't go well this time, because you handled it well, and there's a chance you might try and make it up to them somehow next time. So that's where we see the sort of best practices these days.
Fantastic, really insightful. I think that side of personalisation being key, and
context as well, not just personalisation. It's really important.
Makes customers want to come back, right? So.
Absolutely.
Al Tredinnick, thank you very much.
Well, thank you.